I'm going to love doing this article because this article does two things that I really like talking about. First of all, not only do I find that D&D, again, for myself, and I know several of my friends that we ended up playing D&D with during especially during the pandemic and during lockdown, has been massively helpful to them and helped them get through through the pandemic with having really good sort of like, social interactions and things like that. So it's been massively helpful to them, massively helpful to me as well, because I don't know what I would have done during the pandemic without playing D&D. I think I'd have just done probably, I don't know, maybe continued, but have had a lot less, social interactions than I ended up really did having. And I'm really glad that I played D&D. And I said I did just a couple of last month when I did like my D&D stream almost. We did the Good Morning Walk on it. I again espoused how positive it really is. So I'm really glad that this has been combining to look at D&D to help people with autism and other like social anxiety issues that they've had, and how it's had a positive impact on them, which I, to be honest, think is absolutely amazing. That this game that's meant to be something really geeky can have such a positive impact on people's lives. And as I said before on this channel, we are all about being, positive as much as we can. There's no doomerism here on this channel. So I really want to go over this article because I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I think more people do deserve to know that, just how good a game D&D can have and how much of a positive impact can actually have on you if you do get a chance to actually play this game. So just before we do go jumping into this, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So this comes from The Guardian with the title of A Safe Haven, How Dungeons & Dragons is Slaying Social Anxiety. As pandemic restrictions lift across Australia and more face-to-face activities resume, socializing can now be a source of profound anxiety for many people. But what if, when you meet up with others, you don't have to be yourself? If decision-making is done through a character you create and consequences determined by the roll of a dice. Since its inception in the mid-1970s, the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, or D&D, has brought together a far more diverse array of players than its stereotype actually suggests. Earlier this year, the game's publisher, Wizards of the Coast, released a report showing that of its estimate around 50 million players, 45% were younger than 30 and 40% identified as female. What it didn't reveal, of course, was the rise in visibility of queer and neurodiverse players. It has always been a safe haven for folks who might feel not at home elsewhere, says the game's principal rule designer, Jeremy Crawford. D&D is about a group of people with wildly different pasts coming together to create an intentional family and overcome adversity. A group of players are stronger because of their differences from each other. You don't want 4 fighters. You want a fighter, a cleric, a rogue, and a wizard. In other words, you want a group that is powerful because of its diversity. To play a storyteller known in the game as the Dungeon Master, or DM, takes a group of players through an adventure to set an imaginary world. It is their role to bring that world to life around the players, describe and act the characters or the creatures that they meet, and roll the dice that decide the outcomes of the party decisions. Games can involve more than a dozen players, but most feature around 4 to 6 players who gather around a table with books, dice, pencil, and paper. Some may join via Zoom. Sometimes miniatures, figurines, and maps can be used to illustrate the adventure. For such people as Shadia Hancock, the founder of the advocacy group Autism, Autism Actually, I think that's the name of the group, and Dungeon Master to a group of neurodiverse players, the therapeutic potential of the game has always been clear. It's about creating a sense of community, Hancock says. I work out the players' expectations at the beginning of the game to get some to get really into the creating of their characters. Some are more interested in finding items and exploring the world. Others are really interested in how the characters meet. We all have mutual love of gaming, but we all want something different from the session. The same characteristics expressed by some of Hancock's players, the social anxiety, the increased empathy, difficulty adapting to change, feeling overwhelmed in noisy environments, have all become familiar to many Australians in the wake of lockdowns. Studies cited by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare found that the reports of levels of social anxieties have increased over the past 2 years among all age groups, with young neurodiverse Australians even more likely to have experienced decline in well-being. While other people are excited about going out, I'm filled with dread, Hancock tells me. With COVID, we autistic communities had all these sudden changes, often with very short notice. There was this need to constantly adapt to new rules, not knowing what was coming, and it was really anxiety inducing, especially during the pandemic, and it became very much a shared experience. While there is no shortage of anecdotes on how D&D has transformed the lives of neurodiverse players and their families, published studies are very few and small in scope. Before starting, the players might be more withdrawn and not used to larger social situations, said Hancock. But they create their character and get used to the structure of the game, they become more outgoing. It fosters friendships that in unusual settings wouldn't flow as well. Having that activity-based format and collaborative approach give players the support to try new things. Overcoming the feeling of failure is one of the game's most notable therapeutic aspects. Throughout the game, the player or the DM will roll the dice, and if the outcome of the decision, you will notice a secret door in the castle wall. Can you determine the history of an ancient book? Are you able to charm a unicorn? While failure is not avoided, that is potentially instructive and often an excuse for humor and a release of tension. I think the game is really powerful, says Crawford. It allows players to be daring in ways that are very handy in our daily lives, knowing that if things do go spectacularly wrong, we'll be able to laugh about it. The American game designer Amanda Hammond used a teenage life as inspiration for the forthcoming D&D book, the adventure setting Strixhaven, Curriculum of Chaos. Strixhaven is a magically enhanced university where players arrive as students, join colleges, and form and handle relationships and deal with sinister forces. The book's artwork, with some of the drawn from the trading card game Magic the Gathering, draws students and faculty from across the world from other realms and in the multiverse. As D&D has grown, the creators have realized this game is for everybody, says Hannon. There's lots of folk who are playing, and we want everybody to feel that they're welcome and to come to the table. I get questions like, what is it like that D&D is now more diverse? But it has always been. You might not necessarily think it because it was because the people who were making things didn't always think, hey, here's this whole world of folks out there. For a host of reasons, many of the players prefer playing D&D online platforms such as Zoom, Discord, and Roll20. Others have a hybrid arrangement of the in-person and remote players. As technology evolves, the D&D will continue to grow in popularity, with a greater number of people finding the appeal in moving through the conversations and encounters as more manageable pace and returning the ambiguity of the real-world interactions with the shared adventures and the imagination. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. D&D, I sing its praises constantly. These are a fantastic game. I'm really, really grateful that I managed to get my friends into it, because again, I played it back in university and sort of hadn't played it really much since. It was more Pathfinder than D&D, but if you're into that world, we know why we were playing Pathfinder and not D&D at that time. But yeah, it's been really great. And you know what? If D&D can help people like with autism and like social anxiety and other like neurodiverse features, excellent, amazing. And if there are going to be studies about like D&D, helping these people, I would love to see them. I would very, very gladly go over the articles of what they find in their studies and findings. It would be very, very interesting to see what the findings of those studies are when they are done. Because it does look like they are doing some maybe at the moment. But as always, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, as always, when we talk about this, if you get a chance to go play D&D, go play it. If you've got a group of friends, it's very, very easy to get into D&D. Just go and play it. Don't be afraid to jump in, get your feet wet, and be the DM, because it may look, intimidating. I often say, here's my, Curse of Strahd adventure book, which you're going through at the moment. But yeah, don't be afraid to get into it. And, if you do know someone who plays D&D, ask them if you can get involved with them in their group. the more likely to say yes. Like I say, the more people around the table, the better it is. So don't be afraid, and jump in head first. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next.